What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the Opinionated Hippie, and this is part 72 of my ranking and reviewing Frank Zappa's guitar solos within the context of an album, and then ranking that album compared to the other 71 based on guitar solos only. Today's album is a box set, an 8 CD box set, the Mother's 1971. I'm not even going to say arguably, I would say definitively one of the best box sets, one of the best releases, one of the best albums that have been released post 1993 when Frank passed away. If you're not a fan of the Flo and Eddie period and you have not heard this box set, this could change your mind, at least on the 71 portion of that era, that 2-year era, because this is just an amazing, amazing release. The performances, I think Flo and Eddie are at their peak, and the guitar solos, at least for the sake of this video, are ridiculously great. 17 of them. All of them are enjoyable. None of them are not. And I think if you were to graph like Frank's guitar solos throughout the year, his playing, I think you have like this increase in quality, and then you get 71, and that is a definitive peak in his career. And I would argue that you kind of dip in 72 and 73 as Frank kind of explores new ways and new ways to express himself in his different bands. Then we peak again in 74, kind of dip in 75, 76. Like, they're great in all these years, but then we peak again. Well, then we have a prolonged peak for like 77, 78, 70. I mean, ridiculous at that point. But this is without a doubt a highlight year. Both the summer tours, or the late spring summer tours into the fall tour. This release has 6 shows, 4 Fillmore shows, 1 composite show from prior to the Fillmore, and then you get a December show, the last show that Frank would play with his band. Before he would get pushed off the stage, that audio is on here. It is hard to listen to. It's kind of disturbing, but yeah, it's here. But yeah, 17 solos. I'm going to rank them from 17 to 1. I'll put the list on the screen when I'm done, and then I will rank this album compared to all the others. So at number 17, we get the first of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Billy the Mountains. This is from the Fillmore 6 show, the first show. And this one is kind of tiptoes in, but then it gets kind of hard and bites pretty hard around the 22nd. And then we go and do a lot of these Billy the Mountain solos remind me of Inca Roads, and that, especially from like 74, and that they're more like conversations. Like, they're not really these sort of solos that start off and like build and build and build and peak. They're just solos that kind of just do this and go almost like this linear fashion. And they're always engaging, and there's always like these side conversations that occur within the solo, these little brief asides. But I don't feel like the intent is to go from like the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain and then explode like your volcano solo. They're like Inca Roads, even in like 79. They're these linear solos that are incredibly engaging, that are just things kind of Frank does and not many other guitar players. This one is interesting because we get an almost intro to it, which is not normal for Billy the Mountain, like a softer intro. Then we kind of up the energy and go to that Inca vibe. And then the sound quickly goes clean for a while. And then Frank pulls it at like a minute and a half. Kind of just too short is my issue with this one. Number 16 is Well, the first jam that had John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Typical rock solo. It's between verses. Frank's knocking out a really good high energy rock and roll solo, kind of a blues rock vibe. Good stuff. I do want to say as an aside, I have never understood Frank's animosity, and even Frank's fans' animosity, if you're watching, to the Yoko Ono part of this. To me, Yoko fits perfectly with the early Mother's vibe. I don't think she's that much different than what the bass player does. The early bass player, the one that would come back in 75 and 76 with his like high falsetto. I don't see the difference. They're both challenging the listener to engage in sounds that aren't normal. And I think Yoko in like the 60s Mothers would have fit in perfectly. I don't understand that hatred. I'm not going to accuse it of being sexist. but I don't get it. To me, I think Frank should have embraced it and could have done much better things with it. Like the fact that he calls it a small eternity with Yoko Ono seems like a jab. I like Yoko, but all things aside, well, good rock, blues rock solo. The next one is Billy the Mountain from the second 6/6 show. This is the one that kind of seems like the most normal solo, kind of doesn't go into that Inca Roads conversational, but just kind of seems like a, hey, let's just attack and get more crazy as we go to the end. There's some really like, as we get to the end, like sloppy playing, but meant to be like hectic and, like we're reaching the peak, kind of sloppy in that sense. Still a good solo, but I don't think it has quite that sort of conversational pull that the other Billy the Mountains on this list have. That's number 15. Number 14 is Wonderful Wino. Great Wonderful Wino solo, just a rock and roll solo. Fits right in Wonderful Wino. Number 13 is Chunga's Revenge. I kind of wanted more out of this one. It's the only Chunga's on the box set. I thought this maybe could have had a little more, could have been longer. It's pretty short as it is. It's only around 3 minutes, which for Chunga seems short. It's not that aggressive. Frank kind of comes in with a purpose, like he feels like he has an idea of what he wants to do in the beginning. We get some really good energy, but then it just kind of, it doesn't really become aggressive. It becomes kind of laid back. There's some slinky energy. It's kind of even fun, shall we say. Around 2.5 minutes, maybe short of that, into the solo, Frank really digs in and starts to get a little more hectic and crazy with the sound. But then we kind of go back into the slow vibe, and it just feels like Frank doesn't really know what he wants to do with this solo. Starts off like maybe we're going to get like a Billy the Mountain type conversation, and then we get like weird and slinky and fun, and then we get more aggressive and Hendrixy, and then we pull it back. So it's a little all over the map. This is the only Chunga's on here. It's from the 6/6 show, the first show. I still like it. I still enjoy it. Chunga's is a great song, but it feels like a little something's being left behind, which is why it falls to 13. Number 12 is the Billy the Mountain solo from the second show on June 5th. This one is one that's broken up by, I think it's a keyboard solo, where we get the opening minute plus, which has that Inca Roads vibe. We got some momentum from the beginning. Frank's kind of going, but then he pulls back. The keyboards take over. Then he comes back for like another minute plus at the end. Kind of the same vibe, good energy, a little more low key, but like kind of funky also. Really good. I just think had it been like a keyboard solo, then a longer Frank solo, or a longer Frank solo, then a keyboard solo, it maybe would have worked better and the overall impact would have hit more. But the two little bookends of the keyboard solo are still really, really good playing. And Frank just sounds amazing. And the rhythm section is absolutely amazing. Dunbar, Pons on bass, just absolutely great, great stuff. But yeah, that's what we got here. Number 11 is the Call Any Vegetable. We only get one Call Any Vegetable. This is your typical Call Any Vegetable, just a really good high energy rock and roll solo. This is from June 3rd. This is the sort of bonus show that's cobbled together by two different shows. I think this comes from, this is June 3rd, the second show. One of the best things about Call Any Vegetable is that build out of like the vocal section and that do, 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 do. And then they build and Frank's like, dun, and he's just off to the races. It's got that energy. It's kind of scrappy. Frank has some absolutely amazing runs up the fretboard throughout this. If anything, it's too short. I could definitely use more of this. But Call Any Vegetable, just always such a tasty, and healthy for you guitar solo spot. Number 11. Number 10 is a Willie the Pimp from the June 1st show, one of the bonus shows. And this is a full Willie the Pimp. It's with vocals. It's not coming out of Latex Solar Beef as the other ones on this list do. And Frank is just right when we get to the solo spot, he's off. He's got his groove. It kind of evokes sort of Hot Rats ideas in that it seems like there's all these different like we're going to solo for 20 seconds and a slightly different motif for 20 seconds and a slightly different motif for 20 seconds. Just really great pure rock energy. But because it's not coming out of that slow groove of the Latex Solar Beef, I think it just is not as overwhelming a punch in the gut and just like your standard awesome Frank Zappa rock solo. But it's neat to have the whole song, and I think after that it goes into a sax solo that's pretty sweet. Number 9 is Junior Mint's Boogie, which was a single. I think the B-side of Tears Began to Fall, if I'm not mistaken. And this is also a Willie the Pimp solo, only it's a Willie the Pimp solo that comes, I'm pretty sure it comes out of a Latex Solar Beef, because it sounds like, but it kind of fades in at the beginning, so you don't get the full effect of it. But it's a really good solo. The sound quality is not as good as some of the Fillmore stuff, but it's a really good solo. And it's a Willie solo. The Willie solos are fantastic. And this is from May 25th, 71. So even earlier than the rest of the stuff, but really good solo. Number 8 is Billy the Mountain from the June 1st bonus show. And this is really interesting because at the very beginning, I think there's a sax solo that precedes this. And then, I think this is the right date, right? Yeah. There's a sax solo that precedes this. And then the energy kind of calms down for Frank to enter. And he kind of has to build that energy, which is not very Inca Rhodes-esque. But as he builds that energy and like starts to attacking, he eventually reaches this plateau where we get this nice little run. It's not that long, but we get that more like conversational. We're not going anyplace. We're just going to engage. We're not trying to like get shredding or crazy. And it's really kind of cool. And then as it ends, we eventually go into a drum solo. And then after the drum solo, Frank comes back and just starts playing some really weird, like noises, like weird disjointed licks and runs, and everything gets funky. And then the drums come back in and we get kind of chaotic. It's an incredibly awesome ending that it doesn't happen in the other Billy the Mountains. It almost seems like the song's going to end and we're not going to conclude the rest of Billy the Mountain. It's a really weird, chaotic, frantic, like what is happening here type energy. I don't know if it counts as an actual solo because there's like a drum solo before we get to that part, but I'm including it in the whole guitar experience. And it makes for a really interesting listen. Both number 7 and number 6 are Willie the Pimps that come out of Latex Solar Beef. And that coming out of Latex Solar Beef where Frank plays the dun, 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 plays the riff, and then he kind of dun, and he ups the energy, and it seems like the momentum goes. And both of these Willie the Pimps seem like Frank is like falling forward the whole time. Like the acceleration of his guitar playing, it's like he's gonna lose control, and like Dunbar just has to keep up with them, and the bass has to keep up. And it almost seems like there's this element of like pending chaos almost at all times that just works absolutely beautifully. This is the one at 7 is from the 6-5 show, the second show, and then the one on number 6 is from the 6-6 second show. They're both fantastic. They're both absolutely some of the best playing Frank has ever done. They both are slinky. They both have really attacks. Towards the end of both, Frank kind of gets a little more Y-ish, a little more Hendrix-ish. But really, I think some of the greatest stuff Frank has ever done are these Willie the Pimp solos. Just the sound. It's instrumental. You don't get any vocals. You can hear this on live at the Fillmore East. But these are both absolutely impeccable. Number 5 is the first Billy the Mountain that we get on the set, the 6-5 show 1. This is like, to me, it sounds like Inca Rhodes. To me, it's not like Frank's going for any volcanic release. He's not trying to like, do a masturbatory guitar solo. He's just playing. And there's so many like side conversations. And then we refocus back to the groove. And then towards the end, we get kind of weird and funky as we reach the end of it. Of course, Dunbar sounds great. The bass sounds great. The band sounds great. But it is a special, special solo. And I think there was an original version, a different name of Just Another Band for LA, where we got the full Billy the Mountain with solos. These solos are so fantastic, and it comes out of the Studebaker Hawk part. We go into a whole solo section. Absolutely amazing, but just an almost perfect solo. Number 4 is the Pound for a Brown from the December show. And this is the full version of Brixton Still Life, which I think appeared on Playground Psychotics, right? Maybe there's like 20 seconds edited out, like 10 in the beginning and then 10 towards the middle. But this is one of those just great December Frank solos. It just really has this great, almost like just dancey, light, jazzy, kind of breezy groove. And then he digs in and gets kind of rock for a while. Then he dances around for a while. The drumming is just so amazing. Dunbar is so absolutely fantastic. Before the solo, about maybe close to a minute before it, Frank starts playing Sleep Dirt on guitar. And then like Flo and Eddie come in and make some noises. And eventually we get into the Brixton Still Life solo. But this thing is another fantastic solo. And then the top 3 solos. Number 3 from the second 6-5 show. Number 2 from the first 6-5 show. And then the number 1 from the December show are all King Kongs. These are all absolutely just perfect. Frank exploring at his best. Frank just taking the time to like bring the band down, slow dramatic intro. Frank kind of dances around with chords, kind of builds it up, the very dancey kind of just getting airy and jazzy and a little bit psyche, and then things start to get funky and more staccato and more like weird, and then the drums and the bass kick in. At some point in the solo he starts to dig in and get more aggressive. Like each of these almost follows the same template, but they have enough little variances and differences in each one that each one is just like its own absolutely magical experience. The one at number 1 is the solo that was released, I think a couple edits, not that many, that was released on You Can't Do That on Stage Volume 3 in that King Kong. And that's one of the most perfect things I think Frank has ever done. It is such an absolutely amazing solo. It's funky. The very beginning of it, when Frank's kind of playing with these soft chords, kind of reminds me of the Grateful Dead, circa I don't know, any time in the early 70s, those moments when like they would, playing in the band or a Dark Star, when they would flirt with space and Jerry would start playing these really awesome, like gentle chords and gentle like fingerpick melodies on the guitar. Has a very Grateful Dead feel. This number 1 before Frank all of a sudden just like dun 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 starts playing these like really stark, harsh chords to kind of jar you into like, okay, got to pay attention. And then it just goes on, and Dunbar and the band just sound amazing. But yeah, the 3 King Kongs on here, each of these, like, I don't know if Frank had, I'm sure he had, I mean, obviously we know he had these because he released this on Stage 3, but each of these could have been released on like Shut Up and Play Your Guitar or Transfusion. I think to have something from 71, because these are almost like just standalone showpieces. Like, eventually they go back into like the King Kong thing. But if you take out that, these are just like, Frank could have just walked to the stage and start playing a solo, and these could have been standalone pieces. That's essentially like, this is the first of his like, I'm going to create a moment in each show where I can just play guitar. We have King Kong. We have a number of different songs in like 72. We get Dupree's in 73 and 74. We get Zoodalours in 75 and 76. We get like we get Wild Love and Yo Mama, 77, 78. So during this period, Frank was really like thoughtful about like, I'm going to give myself a moment where I can just start from scratch and build something. Yo Mama, did I say Yo Mama? Wild Love, just absolutely great stuff. And I think this King Kong is like the beginning of it, the perfect example of it, and the greatest monster song Frank ever did. But yeah, that's what they look like. All 17 of them in order. Each of those are fantastic. Like even the ones at the bottom, they're there because you got to rank them, right? They're just maybe shorter. That's all. And I like my Frank solos long. where would I rank this among all the other albums? I have it all the way in the top 10. Probably both 4 solos and the release itself. But yeah, it's at number 4. Like, I have it above 81 and 77 and like 74 stuff, and that's my favorite. But there, Frank's playing is great, and I think the rhythm section has to get props for this. And maybe I'm over ranking it a little bit because it's from a year that this box set has helped me reevaluate and fall in love with in a way I wasn't before this box set. But yeah, it's fantastic. And probably it gets this bump to number 4 because those King Kongs, those Willie the Pimps, that one Billy the Mountain, that Pound for a Brown, those things are just almost unique in his catalog. They just sound like different, him doing things differently than he would in later years or he had done previously. So that uniqueness, it earns it that spot. But yeah, fantastic. That's all I got. Let me know what you think about these solos, what you think about these box set, if you have anything to add, anything I missed up on, all that kind of stuff. You know how these things work. Subscribe, like, share, comment. And seriously, if you're not a fan of Flo and Eddie and you maybe want to open your mind and reevaluate that, this is the box set that will help you reevaluate that. It is a fantastic release. All right, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. Peace. Talk to you later.